Good afternoon. We are welcoming you in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. My name is Elena Frolova, and I am glad to start the briefing with Mr. Remy Duflot, Deputy Head of the EU Delegation to Ukraine online. Today is the 91st day of the aggression of the Russian Federation, full-scale war against Ukraine. And we have more than 6 million people which life completely changed because they became or refugees or IDPs. Of course, such big immigration flow cannot leave aside the many problems which the IDPs and refugees can face. Among them is human trafficking and threat of human trafficking. So, Mr. Duflot, I would like you to introduce to us the communication program which you started and hold it all this time, which is eager to fight the human trafficking. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and доброго дня всім. I'm very grateful for your interest to this issue, to this question. It is very important question, and it should not, and it should never be underestimated. And that's why we started together with the International Organization for Migration. We started that campaign that is finishing at the end of this month. And thank you for listening to the main points of that campaign. It's important that all of the 14 million people that you mentioned in your introduction know about this risk. Whether they are in Ukraine or abroad, they are concerned. And but before entering into details, let me start by reiterating that the European Union condemns in the strongest possible terms the unprovoked and unjustified invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and the innumerable atrocities that Russian forces have committed and continue to commit as we speak on Ukrainian citizens. In this tragic situation, the EU is fully in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. We have provided, continue to provide, and will provide strong political, financial, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and to its people. And I'm open to questions on this assistance later in our discussion, if you wish so. Now, specifically regarding trafficking, as we know, refugees are essentially elderly people, women and children who seek protection abroad, primarily in the neighboring countries of the European Union, Poland very often, but not only. And they receive their support, assistance, from the state, but also from the citizens. As you know, the wave of solidarity to Ukraine citizens is huge in the EU and clearly unprecedented. We are both proud and sad about it. And as we know, we, at the state level, the European Union and the member states, we promptly adopted legislative solutions to ensure social protection of all Ukrainians who are forced to seek refuge from war, notably by activating for the first time ever the temporary protection mechanism that allows Ukrainian citizens in our countries to benefit from small income, small revenue, healthcare protection, access to the job market, and many other benefits. At the same time, as you know, these 8 million people who are now living outside their city of origin, but still within Ukraine, they are facing generally a dire humanitarian situation, and we are also trying to help with our very large program of humanitarian assistance. Now, among these risks that we all face in times of war, the difficult life circumstances may push people to take decisions and accept sometimes too quickly, without due reflection, offers of help with shelters, transportation or employment, which can lead to labor, sexual and other forms of exploitation. And this is why, together with the IOM, we launched that all Ukrainian awareness raising campaign a few weeks ago for the prevention of human trafficking during the war specifically. So this campaign covers the basic security rules to address the risk of human trafficking. We urge Ukrainians not to lose vigilance, to remember that in the difficult circumstances in which they are, they will always find those who will help them, and they are the vast majority of people, but there are also those, few but very active, who can use vulnerability, confusion, disorientation to deceive people, exploit people, and cause moral and physical harm. The campaign stresses that there are 5 security markers that we all should know about and remember: documents, transport, help offers, interaction, and communication. As regards documents, the message is that you should provide documents only to officials and always keep electronic copies. As regards transport, our second security marker, you should know where you are going and tell your family or friends about your trips. As regards offers of help, the message is that you should only accept help from people and organizations that are trustworthy, and you may ask the local authorities about this. As regards interaction, you have to be careful with strangers, not to give anyone your cell phone, for instance. And finally, fifth and last security marker, very important one, communication. Keep always in touch with family, friends, and colleagues. Notify of any changes to your itinerary, place of residence, place of work. Agree with them, with your friends or family, on a code word or a phrase that will signal that you are in danger. And each of these security markers is crucially important, because knowing it can help you timely identify and avoid exploitation, trafficking, or other fraudulent practices. So I will stop here. The only thing I want to say in conclusion is that we know that the problem of human trafficking is real. It exists. Since 1991, statistics show that 300,000 Ukrainians have suffered from human trafficking. So the problem of slavery is a real one. And anybody who is outside his or her normal circumstances must always keep in mind one's own safety. I will end here and very happy to take up your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Duflot. Can you tell a few words about the results of this campaign, how you evaluate this, maybe the coverage, or if you have some kind of hotline which people can use, or a website and they can apply? So what about results?
Thank you. That's a good question. You're right. We have a hotline, and you can see the number above me to my right, 527. That's the number that anybody can call at any time between 8 o'clock in the morning until from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening, to ask questions, report about situations in case of doubt, and to receive advice. It's the mobile migrant counseling hotline in Ukraine. Calls are free, they are anonymous, and the line, as I said, works every day from 8 to 8. Now, it's of course, since, as I said, the campaign is still ongoing, a bit early to conclude about results. We'll be very, very, very happy to come back and communicate in more detail about this. But the figures that we have show that, as I said, the problem is real, and this number is used. Now we will need more survey and more action on the ground to study the situation. And again, we will do it next month. So.
Great. I hope that the figures will show that the problem exists, but I hope also that the figures will show that Ukrainians got assistance which they need in all the situation, and we do appreciate all the assistance which EU countries and EU members are providing to Ukraine. But coming back, like a question not specifically on this campaign, before the war, EU was one of the biggest investors in Ukraine. So level of cooperation was huge. For now on, what changed? What are the priorities for the assistance of EU now, and what is the size of this assistance which you provide now to Ukraine?
Well, that's a very good question. But before this, let me conclude on the previous point. Indeed, we will see that, and these are the preliminary results that we can share with you. The line is being used. It shows the problem is not only real, but addressed. Now, as you said, we will have the full picture only next month when we start studying the results of the campaign. Now, regarding our assistance, generally speaking, I think that from day one of Russia's full-scale invasion, our focus has been on helping the citizens, the people. We did it by redirecting all of our ongoing projects for an amount of 140 million euro to address the needs of people affected by the war. And when I say people, I also mean gromadas, for instance, municipalities. And they are, as we speak, receiving help concretely from projects which were doing something else before, which are now completely reoriented towards helping with, bulldozers, reconstruction materials, blankets, tents, all sorts of things that are of use to those municipalities to address the situation of internally displaced persons and refugees. Now, to this, we have to add, of course, a completely unprecedented movement, as I said, of solidarity that is channeled through the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. More than 30,000 tons of in-kind assistance has been shipped to Ukraine to address the needs of Ukrainian refugees and internally displaced persons. In addition to this, we are now unblocking 330 million. We are currently, in fact, working on how best to apply this new envelope of money in close coordination with the Ukrainian government. And in the future, we will, of course, work also in coordination with the gromadas. To this, I can say that we used 130 million additional money to reinforce, strengthen Ukraine's resilience through a mechanism that we call budget support. So this is money that goes to the Ukraine budget in exchange for resilience measures undertaken at the national and local levels. But this is not all. What has been really new is the amount of military support and assistance. I think now today we are reaching the amount of 2 billion euros to procure more safety to Ukraine, more means to the Ukrainian army to repel the invasion, to support Ukraine's right to self-defense in accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter. And the instrument that we use for this is the European Peace Facility. Just before the war, we were discussing within that framework, we did the framework of the European Peace Facility, a project that was in the tune of 33 or 35 million euros. So as you see, we jumped from 35 million euros to 2 billion in a few weeks. This is a huge effort and clearly unprecedented decision. Besides, we have, of course, tried to coordinate and to motivate other countries and other donors to contribute. We co-organized, for instance, in April, together with Canada and with the help of Global Citizen, the Stand Up for Ukraine global pledging campaign for humanitarian aid, support for refugees, and for recovery. The campaign raised 9.1 billion euro. And again, on the 5th of May in Warsaw, we, at the International Donor Conference, helped to raise another 6.1 billion euro. And now, I would say last but not least, we support Ukraine with micro-financial assistance. The last program that we had amounted to 1.2 billion euro. The last tranche of that program, 600 million, was disbursed last week. But there will be more of it. Last week, precisely after disbursing its last tranche, we presented our plan to address in short term Ukraine's financial gap, as we say, that part of the budget expenses that are not covered by budget income, and as well the longer term reconstruction needs. So this plan is, I would say, twofold. One part concerning, as I said, financing gap. It foresees additional macro-financial assistance of up to 9 billion this year still. And there is also in the longer term for recovery and reconstruction, the idea of helping to put together the Ukraine reconstruction platform that will be co-led together by the Ukrainian government and the European Union. And the Rebuild Ukraine reconstruction plan that will be endorsed by this platform will become the basis for the European Union and other partners to define the areas and specific projects for priority financing. The aim is not only to rebuild the country after the war, but to rebuild it better and in a way that will sustain Ukraine's European perspective, together with Ukraine's very numerous international partners. If one thing is certain, it is that Ukraine is not alone in its fight for freedom.
Thank you. Now I'm giving the floor to the journalists if there are any questions in the audience.
Thank you.
Спасибі. Добрий день.
Thank you. Could you please share if there are any countries or regions where there are higher rates of crimes against refugees, not only the ones from Ukraine, and concerning this communication program, were there any changes in those numbers of crimes?
Thank you. I suggest that then we take one question after the other, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, you can proceed. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, as regard countries or regions which are, I would say, champions or negative champions of human trafficking, we have three, I would say in Europe, three leaders, if I may say. These are Russia. So my personal advice to Ukrainian citizens is don't go there, but also Ukraine and Poland. So there is a link, of course, between the number of refugees and the number of abuses of the refugees, specific situation of vulnerability. There is a geographic logic in, I would say, this distribution. So that's all I can say based on statistics that are today available. We assume that this pattern repeats itself in today's circumstances. The statistics I gave concern the past years, basically. Now, in terms of assistance, you were talking also about assistance. Yes, of course, that's the budgets for assistance that we devote to Ukraine have literally exploded since the beginning of the war, in the good sense of the word. Because the needs are huge, and also because we fully support Ukraine's fight for its freedom and choosing its own future.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? No. Thank you, Mr. Duflot, for your just like a deep deepening of this issue, and thank you for EU for supporting us. And we hope that we also could, in the nearest future, thank you for giving us a EU perspective. I hope so. And дякую всім. І хочу нагадати, що наш наступний брифінг відбудеться.
So our next briefing is going to take place in just 10 minutes. We will hear from Alexander Matuzyanek, the speaker of Ukraine's defense minister. He will be speaking of the situation on the combat operations.
Дуже вдячний.